Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the podcast and the YouTube channel. We are going to take a final look at the NFL Week 17, the final week of the year, NFL Week 17, regular season 15-game massive slate here. Tons of prizes as always over on FantasyDraft, DraftKings, FanDuel, wherever it might be that you'll be playing on this weekend. Before we get into it, I just want to make you aware that I do have a Patreon exclusive content for the NFL, the NBA, and yes, the PGA starts in now 6 days from today on Friday when I'm recording this. So if you do want to get any access to my Patreon exclusive content, you can be sure to check that out, linked up down below. You can follow me over on my social medias, Instagram. Sometimes I give out some of that Patreon exclusive content. And I think I'm going to do it with the game-by-game notes today or tomorrow over on my Instagram stories. I send a link out to a private link only to the Instagram following, so be sure to follow me there. That will also be linked up below, and on Twitter at SalVetriDFS. Thank you if you are new here. Welcome. Appreciate all you tuning in. Appreciate everybody who's been continuing to support the channel. It is booming right now. We're approaching 17,500 subscribers. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get there. Let me know down in the comments, who is your favorite running back play on this slate below $8,000. So $8,000 or below, who's your favorite running back play? Let me know. You must be a subscriber and hit the notification bell. Leave a Twitter handle, some way for me to contact you. I will be giving away $25 to one of the people who enter that contest. If you're listening on the audio version, you can enter by leaving a review on any of the platforms that you do listen on. And lastly, above my head, you see the image of Fantasy Draft. They've been great. They've been giving us free rolls here in the community. Been emailing some people those free rolls. Been posting on Twitter, linking them here in this description. So it's been a ton of fun. We're going to be getting some more, I have believed and have been told. But for this weekend, we don't have a free roll, but I will be creating a free roll, free to enter, and I'm going to be giving away a prize to first. I'm still thinking on it. Maybe a month of Patreon is something that I'm thinking about, maybe a cash prize, but I will create that. I will link it up down below, and you can check it out and search for it. But for now, I'll put a link down to Fantasy Draft. So go ahead, check out Fantasy Draft. It is rake free. They take none of your money, as opposed to DraftKings, who is now going public. And FanDuel takes about 15% on average. They take that money off the top, and then they give the rest to the rest of the winners of the contest, even if it's a cash game. Fantasy Draft, no, you pay a subscription. People say, oh, but you pay the processing fee. It all adds up to still being less than 1%. So that is a crazy good deal. Check out Fantasy Draft, link down below. Clicking that link, just clicking it, even if you don't want to sign up today, it does help me. It shows them that there are people coming over from my channel, which as an independent content creator helps a ton. So even if you have just a second to click that link below, thank you. Let's get into the video, gang, starting with quarterbacks. I have a normal size quarterback pool, maybe one or two more guys, and it makes sense because it's a bigger slate. So I'm starting right now as of Thursday or Friday morning. This is where, my alarm goes off, we're ahead of the game. This is where I currently come in. So starting with, and these are not rankings. My yeses and maybes mean that I'm more interested in the yeses, of course, but the rankings, it's not like the first guy on this list is ranked. It's just really, I think it filters it by overall salary once I put them in a little ranking. But Deshaun Watson, Tennessee ranks 25th in pressure. They get none. If you give a mobile quarterback any sort of extra time, especially when his lineout is already really bad, a bottom 10 offensive line in the league all season long, he's going to be able to pick up some yards on the ground, as he usually does. He averages 27 yards per game on the ground. I think he gets more in this one. They're 19th in coverage. They might get Adore Jackson back in this week, but he hasn't been fantastic. He's just been better than the LaShawn Sims and the Ty Smiths that they've been throwing out there, literally the players' names they've been throwing out there. LaShawn Sims has been a bottom 5 cornerback in the league since taking over for Malcolm Butler. It's now been about 6 or 7 weeks ago. Deshaun Watson ranks number 2 on the entire slate in 0.697 fantasy points per attempt. Obviously, because of the mobility, that helps, but he's also been very efficient. And there's the risk of him being pulled. Now, the Texans can jump into the 3 seed if the Chiefs were to lose at home. I don't foresee the Chiefs losing at home to the Chargers. They have a decent-sized spread, but if the Chiefs were to lose, the Texans can move all the way up to the 3 seed, which ensures them maybe potentially another home game, no matter what, in the second round. So, or at some point, it would ensure them another home game. Who knows? But yes, there's a risk of it. I'm going to play it straight up. For the people who have a lot of questions, I'll hit on a lot of the potential motivation factors. But for that one, I'm going to play it straight up. I like Watson at 6,700. Jameis Winston, he's dealing with a thumb and knee injury. He's been dealing with it, right? You saw it last week. They were saying on the broadcast on the Saturday game, his thumb might be the reason he's throwing these picks. No, it's not. He's Jameis Winston, but it still was fine. He got 18.5 fantasy points even after having another 4 turnover game. He's averaging 40.5 attempts per game and 328 yards per game. Both of those leads the league. Atlanta is 26th in coverage. Their pass rush has improved. Their run defense has improved. I think you see Jameis chuck the ball another 40-plus times. And at 6,600, he remains too cheap. Matt Ryan at 6,500, once again, I like him. He has a -9 pass blocking advantage this week, which is a little bit worrisome, but nothing crazy. It's usually been like that all season long. Tampa Bay does rank 16th in coverage and 13th in pressure. So even their run defense, which is one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league, limits rushing the most, least rushing yards per game by almost 7 per game. Their pass rush and their secondary have vastly improved. It's been a revelation over the second half of the season, really. But Matt Ryan throwing 40 attempts per game, 289.9 yards per game. Both of those numbers are top 5 in the league. He's top 5. I believe he's top 2 now in red zone attempts, with over 70 on the season through these 15 weeks. This offense can just move the ball. It doesn't even matter that Ridley's out. It's just more funneling to Julio Jones, which seems to be more efficient. I'm fine getting to Matt Ryan at 6,500. And that game in general is a really nice stacking environment. Dak Prescott at 6,300. He grades out as one of my highest projected quarterbacks. And yeah, there's definitely motivation. They have to win, and the Eagles have to lose to the Giants, which I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. The Giants are fully healthy now with Daniel Jones back. All the wide receivers are healthy. They've only had that for like 2 or 3 games this entire year. And in those games, they've looked very good, believe it or not. But Dak here, there is concerns. You saw the shoulder. I think it was blown up a little bit more than it had to be. He said it wasn't bothering him. Obviously, he's not going to fully disclose that, or he doesn't need to fully disclose that in an interview, but he did miss 2 or 3 throws that were kind of uncharacteristic. People in the media are going to blow it up and say it's the shoulder because of how big the game was on the national spotlight at 4 p.m. last week, in what was to seal the division at that point if the Cowboys would have won. Against Washington, though, they rank 20th in pass rush, 22nd in coverage, so bottom third of the league in both of those key categories for a quarterback. He's attempted 44.5 attempts per game over the last 6 if you exclude his 23 against the Rams. Well, you can't exclude that. I know, I'm just saying if you did. They scored 28 points at the half, and then they ran the whole second half, and Tony Pollard ran the whole fourth quarter, so it was a very odd game. If you exclude that, well, you see that they're 44.5 attempts over the last 6. He's just chucking the ball right now. A positive 26 pass blocking advantage for his incredible offensive line against this banged up and bad defensive line of Washington. The guy's going to have all day to throw against the bottom third secondary, top or bottom 10 in the league even secondary. And he's going to throw like 40-plus times in a must-win game in Week 17. $6,300, I think, is a bargain for him. I'll also throw out there that Quentin Dunbar, who was number 3 in Pro Football Focus overall cornerback grades, placed on IR last week. His backup, Danny Johnson, placed on IR last week. They lost Fabian Marehu, I believe that's how it's pronounced, a couple weeks back. He's been rehabbing, but I don't think he's going to get back for this one. They're down. Josh Norman's been terrible all year. He's not even getting snaps. They're down to starting Aaron Colvin, who, if you remember, on the Texans was cut after 2 or 3 weeks because of how bad he was. He's one of the worst cornerbacks in the league, and he's going to have to be the primary player this week guarding one Amari Cooper. Good matchups for Dak and these Dallas Cowboys. Patrick Mahomes attempts 35.5 per game, 305 yards per game. Both of those numbers, 305 yards is top 3 in the league. His attempts are top 7. 26.5 team total here at home in a what is a must-win game, I would consider, because if they lose, they could drop to the 4 seed. If they win, the worst that they can go is to the 3 seed, but they have the opportunity to potentially catch the Patriots for a first-round bye. Now, the Patriots are 16.5-point favorites against the Dolphins this week, so I think the Chiefs probably know that they're playing for the 3 seed at this point, but they have to win because if they lose, well, there's going to be pressure from the Houston Texans to jump them for the 3 seed. And then after that, I don't know how much the Chiefs really want to go to Baltimore if they were to win. So I think that there's going to be motivation to win at 7,200. He's expensive. I don't have a ton of interest in Mahomes in terms of, will he be a top 3 owned quarterback for me? No. Top 5? Yeah, maybe. He might get in there. It's a nice spot here. Neutral pass blocking advantage. Decent team total at home. I'll take shots at it. Daniel Jones at 6,400. Look, I like all the wide receiver matchups here. Ronald Darby was placed on IR. You have Avonte Maddox in the slot against a cheap Golden Tate, who for some reason everybody's overlooking this week. You have Darius Slayton dealing with somewhat of an injury, but he's been practicing limited, should suit up on the outside. He'll probably get Jalen Mills. That's a fine matchup. You might have Rasul Douglas making another appearance, which if you remember earlier in the year, he was getting toasted. You can call him the toaster left and right. He'll get Sterling Shepard on him, who seems to be really healthy now after about a month of returning and playing very well. So Daniel Jones, I'm just naturally going to have interest in. He's priced up to 6,400, so that's why I'd rather get to Winston, Watson, Matt Ryan, Dak. These guys are all in the same price range as of now, but it's deserving as the Philadelphia Eagles still rank bottom 6 in the league in pass coverage. They rank 6th in pass rush, and the Giants have a negative 19% of pass blocking advantage. So that's where the concern comes in. Daniel Jones has been very good against pressure at some points, but then at other points he just fumbles 2 or 3 times a game and he looks terrible. So it's what Daniel Jones you're going to get today. Maybe the bad secondary, there's a correlation there with he has more time to throw, but all of his playmakers are healthy. He's only had this for like 2 weeks this entire season because of the Golden Tate suspension to start the year. Then Sterling Shepard goes down to start the year and during the year, right? So now he finally has, well, I guess outside of Evan Ingram, he has all of his receivers and Saquon healthy. We saw what happened last week when that happened. We saw what happened about a month ago when that happened. It's been very good right now for Daniel Jones when he has these wide receivers healthy. 6,400 is a steep tag, but I'll have some stacks. Baker at 5,700. The last time he played Cincinnati, there was a defensive score by Denzel Ward. There was a Kareem Hunt 3-yard rushing touchdown after Nick Chubb had like a 30 or 40-yard run and kind of got vultured away when he was coming out for a breather. And then there was a Baker Mayfield rushing touchdown. So all the wide receiver stats look bad in that game. Even Baker's stats look relatively bad, but it was just an odd-scoring game. It was a slow-paced game where they were controlling it on the ground. You had a 100-plus yard game from Nick Chubb. So I think that this is an interesting spot because he's going to go unowned. He's cheap at 5,700. Yeah, the line's been bad, but the Cincinnati team ranks they rank 25th in both pass rush coverage and in run defense. So they're just terrible across the board. Like really a bottom 8 defense in any area that you look at. It's going to neutralize some of the concerns for Cleveland. I think Baker stacks with Landry, who's very highly owned right now, but I think it's okay. I'm not as interested at that high ownership, but still have a lot of interest. And Odell, at these price points, they're just so cheap to get to. Run it back with whoever you want on the other side. It's going to be a very low owned stack, and maybe you just play chalk everywhere else, but I like it. Kyler Murray's dealing with an injury. He might not suit up. He's 5,500 against the Rams. Jalen Ramsey has already been ruled out for the Rams. Sean McVay has said that he's going to be probably pulling starters during this game, so that just gives us a headache on the DFS side for who the hell is he going to play on the offensive side. But on the defensive side, he's already ruled out Jalen Ramsey and some other players, so it's just a good matchup for Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray does have incentive to play in a way. They can't make the playoffs or anything, but he is right now trailing Josh Jacobs for the Rookie of the Year voting, barely, or at least the Vegas odds on it, barely. Josh Jacobs has not played 2 weeks this season. He might not play this week. If Murray was to suit up, he might be able to leap him. Now, I don't know how much that jumps into it. I imagine that they would like to see Kyler Murray win it, this team. So we'll see. If he's healthy, he'll be out there. And I think it's a good spot at 5,500 for a mobile quarterback who, yes, the Rams do rank second in pass rush. They rank 5th in coverage. So that kind of takes away a lot of his mobility. But 5th in coverage now without Jalen Ramsey, that number's going to drop. And who knows how long Aaron Donald stays in this game and some of the players up front. 5,500 is worth the risk. And then lastly, Phillip Rivers, I think, is fine against the Chiefs. He's going to have to throw the ball. Tough environment, but just has the playmakers, and these playmakers continue to be cheap. I believe all of his players are at least $6,100 or cheaper. Eckler and Keenan Allen are around $6,100, Gordon $6,000, and then you have $5,000 Mike Williams, and even cheaper Hunter Henry in the 4K range. So it's just easy to stack up. Don't like the fact that he has zero mobility. Can't really escape and keep drives alive, but also can't get you an extra 2 to 4 to 5 fantasy points on the ground, if not more, with a touchdown. Case Keenum, he's 4,500. He's going to be starting for Dwayne Haskins this week. Look, he's $4,500. In the 3 games that he started and completely played healthy, he's thrown over 40 times per game. He gets Dallas this week where they're going to come in as underdogs, and Dallas has been iffy in the secondary, very good at times. Their pass rush continues to be good. I think he's a decent cash game option just because he's 4,500, and I'll think he throws 40 times, and he's looked good when he is throwing. Steven Sims Jr. is emerging as a true weapon, and I've been watching him for pretty much the whole season, so it's good to see him actually getting some run here, but he's looked like the real deal, almost a Tyreek Hill Jr. If you watch Steven Sims Jr. play, the type of build that he has and his speed and agility, and just his the way that he plays the game. You still have Terry McLaurin out there, although he's in the concussion protocol. Case Keenum, I probably wouldn't play in tournaments. I play one cash lineup a week, so I'm not going to get there in cash, but it's at least worth mentioning if you are considering him a cash. I think it's okay, but if you had no Terry McLaurin, I would probably get away from that, because then his options, if you have no Terry McLaurin, when he started the first 3 games, Trey Quinn, he's not playing. Vernon Davis, he's not playing anymore. Jordan Reed, he's not playing anymore. Paul Richardson, he's not playing, and then Terry McLaurin, well, he wouldn't be playing. He would be throwing with a whole new cast of characters out there, of most of which are not good. Kelvin Harmon, a rookie, Steven Sims Jr., so it's really hard to trust that in cash. I personally will not be playing Case Keenum in cash. I'm just going to put it on here because I think it's okay because of the price point. Let's move over to running back. On a 15-game slate, I have more interest in running backs. I have 15 of them. I really have 14. I just wanted to put one on here to let you know that I don't have a ton of interest in him, but people will. Let me lower this a little bit so people can see. This is a good time, now that you're here, to hit that subscribe button. Greatly appreciate it. Trying to get to, by the end of the year, 18,000 subscribers. It is going to be a really big push. We have 400 more days, but I really do appreciate it. And then if you have just a second of your time to hit the link in the description to Fantasy Draft and enter into the free contest that they have over there, or any contest, but I really do appreciate hitting the free link. Helps me as an independent content creator. Even if you don't sign up, it just shows them you came from here. A little hack for us here. Helps me continue to keep the lights here on the YouTube channel going from that advertising revenue. So Christian McCaffrey, I wanted to make him a maybe, but I think he's still fine to be a yes at 10,000. Again, you just have to prioritize your lineup around him. There's so much good running back play in the 7, you could even say 6K range, high 6K range, but I'll say 7 to 8K range. Probably 5 guys this week who I think are very viable. and I might even rank ahead of McCaffrey. New Orleans ranks 4th in run defense, 5th in tackling. They're up there. I mean, they're a top 5 overall defense because they're up there in pressure and secondary play. They give up the second fewest rushing yards in the league, in the low 60s, I believe 62 per game. That's not good. Last time McCaffrey played them, he had about 62 in that one, but he also picked up 60-plus yards in the receiving game, a touchdown in each department, so he had another ceiling game. He continues to get 27.3 opportunities per game, 15 receptions on 15 targets last week with Will Grier as his starting quarterback. I'm going to be shocked to see that happen again. So $10,000, yes, he's clearly in play. He's like 20% owned right now. I think I had 15% last time I checked. I'm fine with whatever amount I get of him. Ezekiel Elliott at $8,000. So he might be my favorite pay-up option if we're talking running backs below or above 7,500. And how many of those do we have this week? I think we have like 1, 2, 3. We have like 5 or 6 of them this week. So I think he's my favorite one above that range. Look, he's 23.6 opportunities per game this year, ranks 3rd in the entire league, only behind McCaffrey, I believe, in Fournette. He leads the league in red zone rushing, number 1. He's been there really since the start of last year. He has the number 1 run blocking advantage on the slate, meaning that his offensive line will dominate this defensive line that is banged up for Washington. Again, Kerrigan, they lost a couple weeks ago. They lost defensive linemen throughout the past 2 months. But the other thing is that this advantage for him, although it's number 1 this week, it's top 5 on the year, not just for the Cowboys, for the entire league. Usually when you see those things, Miles Sanders, Aaron Jones, they also had top 5 matchups on the entire year. You know who they played that week? Yeah, Washington. Aaron Jones went for like a career high game with like 180 total yards and a touchdown. Miles Sanders had his career game with like 180 total yards and a touchdown. I'm not saying that's what happens with Zeke here, but $8,000 must-win game. Nobody to stop him in their decent-sized favorites. I love Zeke, and he's getting ownership. He's up there as a top 5 owned player, but I think it's fine. So is Kamara, currently the highest owned player last time I checked. It makes sense. I don't have as much interest as the public does. If he comes in 30% owned, I'll have around 20. So I obviously really like him, but I just like a lot of these guys. So it's going to be more of a balanced approach for me. Carolina gives up the most yards and touchdowns to running backs, 9 more rushing touchdowns than anybody else in the league. There's something to that when it's that bad. It's just a team scheme that, we're in the red zone. They literally cannot guard any sort of misdirection in the red zone. They're just undersized in their defensive line, whatever it might be. It's a positive 26 run block advantage, top 5 on the weekend for Kamara. We saw last week he finally got in the end zone. He finally was breaking tackles. All the things people were saying he couldn't do for about the past 8 weeks, he started to do. He's the highest owned running back right now, like I said, so keep an eye on that if you want to fade it. I don't think you have to, but me getting 20% on a guy who's 30%, I don't consider that a fade. I just don't want to take an aggressive stance and get that much of one guy on a slate where there's 30 teams playing. I'm projecting for 18 touches, 13 carries, and 5 receptions. I think that's more than fine in this matchup. Leonard Fournette at 7,000. Indy ranks 25th versus the run. They give up the most receptions to running backs, 101 this season. Nobody else gives up over 100. They gave up the most receptions to running back last year. And I think they're going to end the year giving up the most receptions to running backs because Leonard Fournette ranks 4th in running back receptions, 2nd in targets, and 2nd in routes run. 2nd in targets and routes run, only behind Christian McCaffrey. He's been fantastic all year. $7,000 is way too cheap. He's a top 5 owned running back because the field, the public, all of you watching this understand that he's way too cheap for his role. I like him a lot. He's probably right behind Ezekiel Elliott for these pay-up options, right? The 6K and above range in terms of my interests. My last 2 yeses are actually some value running backs. I think we have some really good ones this week, depending on how some of these injury or inactives go. Sony Michel at 4,900. Look, he's not sexy. He's not a sexy name to say, but one, he's finally cheap. They're not charging you $5,400, $5,500 to start the guy anymore, and the usage is going up, and I think it makes sense, and I think it holds. 40 carries over the last 2 weeks. Look, Edelman has been limited the last 2 weeks. He's played the least snaps in his career over any 2-game span or the last 3 years of his career, with 62% in low 70s the last 2 weeks. He's been on record saying, hey, if this wasn't must-win games to try and get a first-round bye, I wouldn't be playing. I'll rest when I get our bye. He pretty much has said that on record in Patriots interviews. So if this was the beginning of the year, he would be sitting out for almost a month at this point. He said his body was falling apart, was also his quote, and they're not playing him a lot. So as 16.5-point favorites, I think that one, will get up big, and then Edelman doesn't have to play a lot in the second half. And they got nobody else on this team. Sanu has not been good. N'Keal Harry has been okay in the red zone, but that's about it. Phillip Dorsett's in the doghouse for dropping passes, and Harry has passed him. They're going to run the ball as 16.5-point favorites. Miami gives up the second most rushing yards and attempts to running backs. 16.5-point favorites. I have Sony Michel projected in this one for 22 touches. At 4,900, yeah, you can go out and get 22 touches for 70 yards and no touchdowns, but I'll take that opportunity at that price point in this matchup. And then Damian Williams. So this is important. You have to keep an eye on if LaShawn McCoy is active or not. He's been a healthy scratch 2 times this year. One of them was last week. Another one was, I believe, 5 weeks ago. In those 2 games, Damian Williams has touched the ball 43 times. 43 times. I have Damian Williams projected for 20 touches if LeSean McCoy is out. And at 4,700, he becomes the best value play on the slate. For some reason, he is not highly owned. If that holds up, that is a mistake. But we probably won't know McCoy's status. We can maybe read some beat writer reports today and tomorrow, but we might not know McCoy's status until an hour and a half before the game. So you're taking on risk. If McCoy does suit up, I'm only going to have Damian Williams for like 13 or 14 projected touches, which is nowhere near as good as the 20, right? So those are my yeses. I'll briefly go over my maybes. $8,200 Aaron Jones. Yeah, he's priced up, but I have interest. No Mike Daniels, the former Packer. This is the second time he'll miss a game against the Packers. Last time was a primetime game, but also what that does is it makes this run defense go from actually being pretty good, a top 10 run defense since he's been in this season, to when he's been out, which is about half the season. They're bottom 10 run defense. You have Jamal Williams questionable. He might suit up, but we'll see. We'll track that. If he's out, well, then you probably secure another 2 to 4 at least touches for Aaron Jones here, especially some more red zone play and then also just targets in the passing game. Detroit ranks 26 against the run this year, and Packers are 12.5 point favorites. 8,200 is a steep price point to pay, but he's not going owned. He's like 1% owned because of it. If there's no Jamal Williams, I'll have more than that. Nick Chubb is also going unowned, but he's 7,500. To me, he's not as good of a play as Fournette. He's a similar play, though, as Alvin Kamara. Not as good of a play as Zeke, but Nick Chubb, he is going about 8% owned to Alvin Kamara is close to 30%. That makes no sense to me. I would have double the field. I would have about 15 of Nick Chubb right now. He's going way too low owned. He went for 100 plus on a touchdown last time he played. He's averaging 17 touches per game over the last month. 2 Kareem Hunt's 10.5. So there's a concern there. Like the gap is closing, but I still think he gets around 20 touches in this one. Eckler, Melvin Gordon, I think they're both in play. I prefer Melvin Gordon barely, but they're big underdogs in Kansas City. That's usually not a spot you want to get to, but Gordon still does see at least 4 targets a game. Eckler still sees his 5 or 6 targets a game, but not as much on the ground or in the goal line, by the goal line. So I think they're both good plays this week. I prioritize Gordon, but I don't have a ton of either. Joe Mixon is just going unowned this week, like literally no ownership. And I get it, he's priced all the way up to 7,200. But over the last 8 weeks, the last 2 months full of games, he's averaging 23.5 touches per game. Not opportunities, not factoring in targets, literally touching the ball 23.5 times per game. That is hard to ignore versus a 31st ranked Cleveland run defense that ranks bottom third of the league in tackling. I don't know what there isn't to like about Mixon. He was sick last week, and they still gave the guy 23 touches. So I like him a lot here. I like him a lot relative to the field. If the field's going to own him at 3%, I currently have like 10%, and it's a lot of in and run back options with this Cleveland team. Marlon Mack at 6,900, just hard to get to, but everything about this matchup screens out fantastic. Jacksonville ranks 29th against the run, 32nd in tackling, that is dead last. A positive 32% run blocking advantage for Mack. I have him projected for 18 touches, but he's expensive. At 6,900, I'd much rather have Leonard Fournette. I'd much rather have at a similar price point the Nick Chubbs of the world, the Joe Mixons of the world that I was just talking about. So it's hard to prioritize him. He's going to go low owned, and if you do get to him, you can feel good about it because it's as good of a spot as it gets for a running back. You just have to paying a lot more for it. Philip Lindsay, he's been out touching, I believe, 66 to 39 Royce Freeman over the last month. That is a decent gap. We finally saw him go for 100 plus and a touchdown last week. Oakland, middle of the pack to below average in run defense and tackling. He's not a priority for me this week. I would prefer Gordon and Eckler in his price range, but I do think he's at least in play to be in your player pools. Last 2 players here, Justice Hill. I'm not going to have interest in Gus Edwards, already priced up to 4,800 against the number 2 overall ranked Steelers run defense. That is a must-win game for the Steelers. And also, there's no Lamar Jackson, it's Robert Griffin III, so drives might not go as deep as they usually do. They might not stay alive as often with the just rushing ability of Lamar Jackson to keep drives alive. So I'm concerned for both Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards has no passing game role, though. Justice Hill does. So I'm only preferring Justice Hill because he's $200 cheaper and has a passing game role. That being said, I think these guys touch the ball like 12 to 14 times each. And that's not really that appealing for me. The ownership's not coming in on them, and I agree with that. Patrick Laird, I'll have 0% of. There's no Myles Gaskin, so he might have to play 75+% of the snaps. DeLance Turner is the only other guy below him on this depth chart as of right now. I'm sure they'll activate some other guys. I want 0%, but I'm sure people will have some. He's a 16.5 point underdog against the Patriots. They have a decent pass rush, so he might stay on the field more because he's a good pass protector. But what you're hoping for here is like 5 to 6 receptions. It can happen, but even then, I think there's some other good plays. I would much rather play Damian Williams and Sony Michel this week. Let's move on to wide receiver game. I'm enjoying this. This is a good week. I like the big slate that we have here, and then we're going to go into. So just an update on my channel. I'm going to be doing content for the PGA, which starts on, I believe, Thursday. I'll be doing, as of right now, one video once the NFL is still going with the NBA, so I don't overwhelm myself with these 3 sports, but I'll be doing one video a week on the YouTube channel, and I'll be doing a data sheet over on Patreon with a podcast, probably an ownership and final takes podcast on Patreon for PGA as well, continuing to do NFL all the way up till the Super Bowl, and then going to be doing NBA all the way up to the NBA Finals. So I'm very excited for it. If you do want to check out my Patreon exclusive content, I'll link it up above right now. It is also linked up down below. If you also don't even want to buy it, you don't really care too much about that, you can also just support by donating over on Patreon, supporting the channel. It does help. So thank you. Appreciate that a ton. Going to wide receiver now, Julio Jones, 2 games without Ridley, 23 receptions, 300 yards, 2 tutties on 35 freaking targets. He's likely to see Carlton Davis. It's a great spot. You have to prioritize him. He's picking up some ownership, but I think it's fine. DeAndre Hopkins not picking up any ownership, like anywhere near ownership. He missed yesterday with an illness. Just keep an eye if he plays or not. But he's going unowned. He's likely to see Sims if Adore Jackson misses. Sims has been a bottom 5 cornerback in the league, and even if Adore Jackson plays, Adore Jackson has been very average at best. Hopkins, look, he's 7,800. You have to prioritize him. If he was 15, 20% owned, I'd be like, okay, I don't have too much interest. I'll get some. He's going like 5% owned as of right now. That number can change, but for right now, I would want a lot more against this bottom 5 ranked outside cornerback play of Tennessee this year. Amari Cooper, it's really hard not to like him. I said that they placed Quinn Dunbar top 5, top 3 cornerback according to Pro Football Focus this season. He's been fantastic on IR. His backup on IR. They've just been placing everybody on IR, and Josh Norman's been bad that they're not even playing him, even with all of these injuries. So he's likely to see Aaron Colvin, 3rd best matchup on the entire weekend for Amari Cooper, a positive 30% advantage. Keenan Allen is too cheap at 6,100. He has a positive 20% matchup versus Kendall Fuller. Continues to see 10-plus targets a game. He might see some of the Honey Badger in the slot, who's a safety who's been playing the slot in place of Fuller on some snaps. So that's a really good spot as well. Underdogs here, you're going to have Rivers throw minimum of 35, probably to 40 times. Keenan Allen I have projected right now for 11 targets. Hard to ignore that at 6,100. Jarvis Landry and Odell, I like both of these guys. I'm fine stacking up this team because they're so cheap. Jarvis Landry's picking up a lot of ownership. I'm not going to get to as much as he's being picked up, but I will get to a decent amount. He'll first TJ Carey in the slot, which is a good matchup. TJ Carey is pretty much a backup slot because BW Webb's playing on the outside now. Odell will face William Jackson, 23.5 team total, so I think it's fine to stack Cleveland. Michael Gallup, I like. Dak, I already said, I like this team to stack. I like Amari. Gallup, the same analysis as Amari. There's just 3rd, 4th, 5th string cornerbacks out there playing off the street right now against some very good wide receivers, and Gallup is dirt cheap at 5,400. I have Gallup projected for 8 targets this week. Golden Tate at 5,100. I'm shocked. He's like 1% owned. How does this happen? Look, he's dropped about $700 to $1,000 in price because Eli Manning was his starting quarterback for 2 to 3 games, right? Because he had no connection with Eli. But when Golden Tate's in there, he's averaging close to 10 targets per game. He saw 11 targets, 6 receptions, 90-plus yards last week. You're getting him for 5,100 at low ownership and a low price point. Golden Tate at 5,100 in this matchup against Avonte Maddox in the slot, I currently have projected for 9 targets. I'm kind of baffled why nobody's owning him. He's not a slam dunk play, but there's a really good chance he goes for 780 and a touchdown, and I'll take that. 760 and a touchdown, and I'll take that. Just on the way that Daniel Jones looks into the slot. So, yeah, I like this a lot. Giants trying to play spoiler this week against the Eagles. Christian Kirk, we'll see if he suits up. I only have interest if he obviously plays, but then also his quarterback plays. I don't want to play Brett Hundley with Christian Kirk. But Kirk at 4,700, although I don't think he's wildly underpriced like a lot of people do. People are saying he's $1,000 underpriced. At 5,700, I think he's overpriced. But he's probably a $5,400 receiver, 5,300. So, yeah, he's definitely underpriced. There's no Jalen Ramsey. He's already sitting out. We said that the Rams have no motivation. They're going to be pulling stars on both sides of the ball. If Murray plays, I think he's too cheap, and I would get some Christian Kirk. Now, I have a long list of maybes here. I'll just kind of read them off. Devontae Adams, I have no strong stance. He's picking up some ownership, not a ton. If you want to play him, I think that's fine. I prefer DeAndre Hopkins, who's half as owned, and Julio Jones, who's more owned, but in a better spot in my opinion. But Devontae Adams, there's nothing to say there. He's a much better wide receiver than Darius Slay is a cornerback, so I'm not concerned about that matchup. Tyreek Hill is going unowned, as he probably should. I'll only have him in some of my Kansas City stacks. He's just highly priced. He's not going to be shadowed by Casey Hayward, though. And once again, if you've been watching my channel, Tyreek Hill never gets shadowed because he can't be shadowed just the way that he plays. A.J. Brown is very interesting. I don't really love the $7,000 price tag back-to-back weeks, but he's not facing Marshawn Lattimore this week. Because of the price tag, that's keeping people off of him, and his performance last week against one of the best shadow cornerbacks in the league in Lattimore this season. But now you have A.J. Brown, who is getting Derrick Henry back on his team, and that just makes their play-action passing much more effective and efficient, and deceptive is the key there. So A.J. Brown, we've seen the volume for him for a couple weeks now when he's not being shadowed by Lattimore. I think he's interesting at $7,000, especially if you're going to stack the Houston game. He would be my favorite run-back option. Tyler Boyd, Perriman at the same price. They're both a very secondary interest for me. I actually don't like either of them all that much. Perriman's priced up, but he's going to be an option that sees probably a minimum of 7 to 8 targets from Winston and a decent run back option, but not a priority for me. Same thing for Tyler Boyd at that price point. Sutton at 6,400. All these guys are secondary interests. I do think T.Y. Hilton at 6,000 is interesting. Yes, he's only had 30 yards or less in the last 3 games, but he's been playing injured those games. It was good to see him lead the team in routes run last week. He probably would have ran 30 plus if indeed they dropped back and threw that many times. He'll get Boye, who's been a bottom 8 cornerback in the league over the last 8 games. I think it's a risky spot for sure. I've been playing T.Y. Hilton at 6,000, but if you don't play this guy in the last week of the season if he's not at least decently healthy. I think he probably runs 30 plus routes in this one as long as they throw that many times. And I like it against this Jacksonville bad defense. It's not a priority. He's currently going unowned. I have like 6%, but that's double the field. So don't come back and say, I played 100 lineups. I played him in all of them and he stunk. He only got me 10 points. Yeah, that's a risk you're taking. He is a risky play that I'm going to have more than the field, but not a ton overall. And then you can see the rest of these interests. They're all secondary guys down here. Shark, Crowder, Darius Slayton. Justin Watson is interesting. He saw 10 targets last week. He's dirt cheap at 4,900. He would be more of a staple for my stacks of that Tampa Bay side. Greg Ward, we'll keep an eye on Nelson Aguilar. We'll keep an eye on Zach Ertz. Both of them very questionable for this weekend. Ertz more likely to play, but I think he has like a broken rib and it's severing part of his insides. It's just disgusting. But Greg Ward has been good. He'll get a nice matchup against the Giants, one of the best you can find. Kenny Stills will take over for Filler. He let a lot of people down last time, but keep in mind he played Denver last time, one of the best secondaries in the league. This week he gets to get a much better matchup against the Titans. So with Fuller out, I actually do like Kenny Stills at 4,600. Yes, I know he probably burned you. He burned me 2 or 3 weeks ago against Denver. This is a much different matchup, the total opposite in terms of how much more ease he will have at getting open in the secondary. John Ross and Russell Gage. Ross saw 13 targets last week, took on a full-time role. I'll likely get 3 to 5% of him in run-back options with the Cleveland stacks. I think he's in a nice spot, took on his full-time role last week and still dirt cheap. Moving on to tight end now. Be sure to hit the link down below also, and you can find my Instagram page where I do release exclusive content. We're close to 2,000 subs. Maybe if we get to 2,000 subs, this is what I'll do, or subscribers. Once we hit 2,000 followers on Instagram, I'll release my NFL game-by-game notes. Every single game, players in them, my notes on them. It is about 20 pages of content that I write every single week. It takes me the longest every single week because I'm very thorough with it. So if we get another, I think we're like 100 away on Instagram, another 100 followers. Once we get to 2,000 followers, I will release that on an Instagram story. So be sure to hit the link down below. I like that little bit of a giveaway right there. So tight end, it's really kind of condensed for me. Although there's a long list here of 10 players, there's only 3 yeses. And a lot of this has to do with pricing and injury statuses and are players going to play the whole game. But Austin Hooper at 5,800, he's the second most expensive he's been all season. The last time was right before he got hurt. He was 6,000. He's low owned because of this, but he's seen 21 targets since returning. That's really good, 7 a week. He saw 9 last week. That's really good, and I think that only continues to grow against a bad defense here where there is, once again, no Calvin Ridley. I do like Austin Hooper at 5,800. He is one of my top 3 to 5 favorite tight ends on the slate. So is Darren Waller at 54. Tough matchup in the secondary if he gets a lot of Justin Simmons, who might have been one of the Pro Bowl snub or right around the Pro Bowl this year. It'll be tough. All the way back in week 1, he played this Denver team, 7 catches on 8 targets for 70 yards, sort of started his breakout campaign. He sees about 22% of the red zone targets. He sees almost 30% of the air yards on this team as a tight end. Hard to ignore that at 5,400. And Dallas Goedert, he's my preferred Philadelphia tight end, whether or not Ertz plays. He's just been running the same amount of routes as Ertz, same amount of red zone opportunities. And now with Ertz, no matter if he plays being less than 100%, he's probably the more skilled tight end out there if he's 100% and Ertz is only 70, 60%, right? And then my secondary interest, Travis Kelce, you just have to prioritize him. I'm fine if you want to get to a lot of Kelce. He's $7,000. He's expensive for tight ends, but if you take that tag off and say you put a wide receiver emblem next to his name instead of a tight end, he would be an average priced wide receiver at $7,000, and you wouldn't have a lot of concerns with him. He would be the same price as A.J. Brown, and then if I tell you, well, yeah, Travis Kelce compared to A.J. Brown, I think that's a fair price point. So if you want to get there, I think that's totally fine. I am currently underweight, but it's nothing major. My alarm goes off again. I don't know. It's only 6 o'clock. I've been up, my man. 2 hours. Let's go. Zach Ertz. Look, I'm concerned here for the injury. He's $6,000. He continues to be double teamed, and this injury is a major concern for me. So right now I want to wait on more news. If he does suit up, he's not going to be a priority for me because we've seen this injury limit him for a couple weeks now. Tyler Higbee is priced up to $5,600. We saw last week he was still seeing a ton of usage ahead of Gerald Everett. The concern is, does Goff play the whole game? Does he play the whole game? I think he probably does. I'm not sure if Goff does, but at $5,600, I will have a good amount of against Arizona. It is a smash spot for tight ends as it has been all season long. Hunter Henry at 4,500, just too cheap. OJ Howard at 4,300. He's being currently projected as the highest owned tight end. I don't want any of that. If he's going to be 20+% owned and Hunter Henry is like 5% owned, for $200 more, I will have a lot more balance there. I'll have 10% Howard, 10% Henry, something like that, right? I don't need to take a strong stance on OJ Howard, whose role has not changed at all in 3 weeks now without Evans and 2 weeks now, or a week and a half without Chris Godwin. His role has not changed. It's been the same thing. If anything, Cam Brate's role has changed and increased. Mike Gesicki and Caden Smith would be my final options. Gesicki probably has the best matchup out of all pass catchers against the Patriots. It's still a difficult one, but my priorities would be at that top end: Hooper, Darren Waller, Goddard, and then honestly probably Tyler Higbee after that. So thank you for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. I will leave you with my target offense sheet, where I still, as of this morning, I did not have a total on this Rams game because of probably Kyler Murray, but also what they're going to do with their players. So there's my target offense sheet. You can screenshot it. Check out my Patreon exclusive content. Be sure, if you're still here and you have a second on the podcast or on the YouTube channel, take just that extra second if you do appreciate my work, and do hit the link below. Check out Instagram. Again, follow me there. 2000, I'll release my game-by-game notes. And then also, if you go down below and just hit the link to Fantasy Draft, all you got to do is hit the link. It'll actually go to my Twitter because I can't post links. Otherwise, the account gets banned or suspended, and I don't want that. So it'll go to my Twitter. While you're there, just hit the subscribe button. But then just hit the link. You can enter the contest if you want over there. But if you hit the link, it does show them that you came from me, and it helps me a ton. So I appreciate you tuning in. My name's Sal. You all rock. Have a great rest of your day. Peace out. For tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Above my head, if you're not already subscribed to this channel, I do ask you if you can please hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a good amount to reach more people. You can also follow me on Twitter. That's over there. Right in the corner is my @SalVetriDFS Twitter. And then above, you'll find my Patreon link. You can click on that if you want more exclusive content for me, or a video is going to pop up. So why don't you check that one out as well? I think it's going to be beneficial for you. Thank you so much again for tuning in, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.